Challenging, thought-provoking, insightful. This is God in Country, the collision of faith and politics, hosted by nationally known speaker, Reverend Dr. Sean Michael Greener. Not your typical Rev. Dr. Sean is a proud military veteran, former law enforcement officer, and founder of the internationally regarded Executive Protection Team. Through counseling, elite life coaching, and national speaking, this ninja pastor tells it like it is. This series is biblically and politically engaged with the pedal to the metal. With today's edition of God in Country, here is host and author of the acclaimed yet controversial book, Excellence Killed the Church, How Mediocrity is Destroying America, Dr. Sean Michael Greener.
Welcome. I hope that everyone is doing well here on Memorial Day weekend. I live in a resort area or close to a resort area. Grew up in a resort area, so there's essentially one or two roads in and one or two roads out, and the weather has just broken loose. And so, as I understand it, down at the beach, it is apparently raining. Cats and dogs and squirrels and whatever else. So this is Memorial Day weekend, 2018, and I'm Reverend Dr. Sean Michael Greener, and thank you from all around the world for listening to this. This will be probably one of the more brief episodes you'll ever hear, brief sermons from me you'll ever hear. We're here, we're fat, dumb, and happy. We've gotten some amazing desserts, some good hoagie. I see some fresh salad down there. Some great meatballs and turkey sausage, and then some cheese raviolis and sauce. Real good. Everything's good. Everything's real good. So we're just happy as can be. But you know, Memorial Day comes around once a year, right? Memorial Day comes around once a year, and then there's of course Veterans Day, and then there's Armed Forces Day. You know, so we have three distinct holidays. So I always like to start off by helping people understand what the holiday is. And let's see here. What do we got here? Hey, Mike. How you doing? Thank you for joining us. Yeah, come and join us. Sunday blessing to you too, Craig. Thank you all. We got a lot of places. By the way, let me just mention this. Last week's message was the most shared message I've ever had. Over 3,800 so far shares on that. Yeah, 3,800 people shared it, which is really cool. I don't recall ever having that many, but that was really, really neat. So if you missed last week, go back and grab our free app. And if you don't know how to get our app, just send me a message at smgreener@gmail.com, and we will get you the link to the app, no problem at all. No doubt about it. There's a desktop app if you don't have a smartphone, and we have an Android app and an iPhone app, and none of this costs, so it's all free. So, Veterans Day. Let's start with Veterans Day. You know, you guys know what Veterans Day is. Veterans are for people who serve, to honor the people who have served. Not the ones that are serving now, but the ones that served. I would be considered in that holiday, Veterans Day. And Veterans Day is a very important holiday because those people who survived during their time of service, no matter how long or how short, during their time of service to the country. So we honor veterans, people who put on a uniform, who raised their right hand, and gave an oath which never expires. Then there's Armed Forces Day. Armed Forces Day is for those which we have active duty people represented here. Armed Forces Day is for the people who are currently serving. They have an American flag on one of their shoulders, and that's an important thing. We have to make sure that we encourage them. It's a very difficult job. You make very, very little money. If you could just know what I made all those years ago, and then they don't make appreciably more now. It's kind of crazy. One of the next targets for President Trump is to give them a significant pay and benefits increase, and I'm all for that. I really appreciate that. And so some folks say, well, where's that money coming from? I don't know. Somebody add up how much we're paying for illegal aliens in this country, and let's see if we can't help our own armed forces out a little bit. Maybe we can find some money. And then it comes to Memorial Day. Now, Memorial Day is very near to me because I've known since a young kid the true meaning of Memorial Day. Now, as a kid growing up in the Lewis Rehoboth area, we always had a Memorial Day parade. That was a big deal. I don't even know if they have one now. It would be an entirely different parade now. You know what I'm saying? But Memorial Day parades were real big, and everybody had floats. The bands played. It was a big, big deal. Yes, it was a kickoff to summer, beach resort community. That's a big deal. But it was also a day of remembering those who have given their lives. And I have to tell you, I remember several years dressing up in military uniform as a kid. One year I went as a member of the Iwo Jima, where they're staking the flag on Iwo Jima. And I was very honored to do that. It was just really, really a huge honor. Communities all across the country are memorializing their fallen, their war dead, from Florida all the way up to Maine. A lady was running the other day, one of our dear listeners was running the other day, and saw crosses with names on them and flags just from her town, just a small town. And then another dear friend, Andrea Shea King, you should listen to her on the radio. She's coming back on the radio. It'll be an awesome thing. Here on Spreaker, if you look her up on Spreaker, she's absolutely amazing. Isn't she amazing? Anybody's listening to her, she's something special. And I'm privileged to be her friend. And she's a true patriot. Well, Andrea, in her hometown, she happens to be visiting right now, all the way on the other side of the country. There's flags, there's remembrances, all of those things, crosses. It's really something powerful, and everybody's got their American flag. But Memorial Day, for some folks, is not what it is for us, for many of us. Now, I know, and by the way, thank you to our Gold Stars who are listening. Thank you for doing that. This show is in honor of you and is dedicated to you and the great sacrifices that your families have made on the behalf of freedom. So I want to talk about Memorial Day in general and the Gold Star families. And I've been asked this several times, and I'm sure you've been asked this. And in fact, even military people that I've talked to, people in the military, have asked me after I've given a speech and I use the term Gold Star, they'll say, well, what is a Gold Star? And a lot of times they just don't know. They just don't know what that is. And so a Gold Star is, and you might have seen some of these banners, these small banners, in somebody's window. And it's blue for if they're deployed, correct?
Yeah.
Silver, I think, if they are silver, or
I don't know.
yellow.
You're told not to put it up because you don't want your house to be a target.
Yeah, you don't want to be a target.
They give it to you, but they tell you not to put it up.
Sure, exactly. It's a good point. You don't want to put that up because then you're a target of the whack jobs that inhabit our country now, running around wanting to harm veterans and veterans' families while they're away, or soldiers' families while they're away serving. So I just want to say that Memorial Day, a Gold Star, it sounds like some kind of club, right? I'm in the Gold Star Club. It's a club nobody wants to join. That's a family member of a soldier that died in service to our country. Airman, Marine, Coast Guard. I mean, all of it. All of it. So they go away, and they don't come back. And then one of a few things happens. Now I'm going to reference something. Again, this is not going to be very long. I know everybody has their stuff. Some folks are telling me that they're pausing their barbecue to listen. So thank you very much for that. It's quite an honor. And if you weren't so far away, because I know your food would be good. I'd just drive right up there.
Come by and see him now.
Yeah, come by and see you. It appears as though there's ribs being cooked. Beef ribs being cooked. I don't know. That's the rumor. I wrote an eBook called Living Through Grief on Purpose. And I want to say, I'll say that name again, Living Through Grief on Purpose. The book is only available for free, and it's only available through me. So if you contact me, your Gold Star, friend of a Gold Star, and you know somebody that's a Gold Star that's going through a terrible time right now, I really want to encourage you to get a hold of me, smgreener@gmail.com, or if you're on Facebook, contact me through Facebook. I'd say Tumblr. I'm on Tumblr, but I don't even know what it is really. Google Plus, LinkedIn, Twitter, all that, at the Ninja Pastor on those. Get a hold of me. I will get you a free copy of it. But I wrote it because we have these dear friends, Charlie and Marianne Strange, and Charlie lost his son, Michael, in Extortion 17. They were shot down. And so we have some other dear friends and people that work with the Michael Strange Foundation here. And so I was speaking at these workshops, doing some grief consultation and some grief counseling, if you will. And I wrote this book because I thought, well, that might be a good thing to give them. And then I realized there's a lot of people all around the world. We've sent this electronically all over the world. French Foreign Legion, a lady whose husband died in the French Foreign Legion, sent and requested a copy of it, and I was honored to send it to her. And I'm hearing that it's a blessing to them. So I just want you to know, as you listen to this, if you would like a copy of it, just get a hold of me through any of those ways, and I'll get it to you one-on-one. I want to say this. Sometimes we have this impression. It's not even an impression. I'll tell you what it is. And I got into a debate this week with somebody about law enforcement. Law enforcement, being too hard on certain segments of the population. And then so it's back and forth and explaining what it's like to actually go into a certain neighborhood, or even not even a bad neighborhood. Nowadays, police officers, you're at risk all the time. And the person with whom I was in the debate said, yeah, but you know what? They signed up for it. They knew the risks. And I hear that a lot about Memorial Day. You hear it a lot. Well, they did sign up for the risk. They knew what they were getting into. This soldier that was killed, this airman, this sailor, Coast Guardsman. They knew what they were getting into. They knew what they were signing up for. As if somehow or another that attenuates the massive waves of grief that come. You might be surprised to know, and I was very stunned. I did a lot of research on this for the eBook, but this just blew my mind. And I'll preface this fact with, in this country right now, I know of someone who was killed in action as a special operations person, hasn't hit the news yet, who the notification officers, casualty officers, are on their way to their house, the family's house, right now. Ironic. I just got a text, just got a notification right there. I don't know the fellow that was killed, but I know the circumstances that he was killed in. So somebody's going to get this word. I thought, how amazing, Memorial Day. How unbelievable. I do remember being many, many years ago, probably, I want to say maybe almost 20 years ago, 17, 20 years ago, something like that. I remember being in Arlington on Memorial Day. And we were there in Arlington. I was there with two other people. I wasn't there with them, but they happened to be with me. We were talking. And I remember a lady in the row next to us. I think we were in row 50, 51 or 52, I think. And the lady in the next row down from us, a limousine, not a limousine, but a black government vehicle pulled up. And a master chief and a senior chief got out, in full uniform, dress uniform, and they walked to her. And when they walked up to her, we couldn't hear. We couldn't hear what they were saying. But she was very gracious. She turned, shook their hand, thank you, all this. We couldn't hear what they were saying. But what we saw next was her collapsing. Right there in Arlington. Right there between the graves, just collapsing. And it was in an instant, It wasn't as though she prepared to kind of get on the ground, and get on her knees and, just she collapsed. It's like somebody pulled the skeleton out of her. And the sobbing, I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could hear the sobbing. I could hear the utter, irrepressible grief. She was there visiting a family member. And that's where she got notified that her son would soon inhabit those hallowed acres. Killed in the line service for this country. I thought it was the greatest irony I'd ever experienced in my life. I thought, wow, that's standing in. And what had happened was they had gone to the house, the address of record, which was ironically right next to Arlington. They lived next to Arlington. And she would come and visit, every Memorial Day, and she would put her quarters and her different things, all the different little dressings. Well, so-and-so like this and so-and-so like that. People she knew, people she was related to. I believe it was her uncle or somebody also that was in there. And that's where she was told, your son will never come home to you whole again. He'll be up there in section whatever it was up to then. I remember the people I was standing with, we were aghast. We really didn't even know what to say because nobody really ever thinks that's going to happen. You're going to be standing in Arlington National Cemetery and you're 20 yards from somebody who is told, they're visiting and they're told that their son is gone. Absolutely astounding. But I came across something today that just stunned me. If you've never been to Arlington, I would encourage you to go. And there are veteran cemeteries all across the country. Some of them are really quite amazing. Some of them, the town or the state that maintains them should be ashamed of themselves. But many of them are absolutely breathtaking, meticulously maintained. Well, Arlington is something I think anybody ought to see in their lifetime. I think you need to go see it. One time. Just go one time. Spend some time. Walk among them. Well, I came across something that stunned me about World War II. The number of dead in World War II was astronomical. With each war, more and more and more have died up until this war that we're in now, the War on Terror. An appreciably much smaller amount died so far during this war. Not that it makes it any better, but tremendous amount of loss indeed. One is too many. But in World War II, all my uncles, except for one, and he didn't go only due to polio, all my uncles except for one, they went to World War II. They were in the war. One was in the whole war. I came across something about World War II on one particular day that literally took my breath away. And I had to read it and reread it and reread it. And then I had to research the footnote. May 27th, 1945.
There's a list of them.
Amazing, isn't it? Do you mind if I read this?
Yeah.
So the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783, 4,435 casualties. The War of 1812, 2,260 casualties. World War I, 116,516 casualties. World War II, 405,399 casualties. Korean War, 36,574. Vietnam War, 58,220. Desert Shield and Desert Storm, 383. And Enduring Freedom, we have over 6,700. And Iraqi Freedom, October 2001 until present, over 6,700 casualties. Thank you. 6,700 casualties. May 27th, 1945. On that single day, there were 7,278 soldiers killed from the United States of America. 7,278 telegrams went out. 7,278 home visits were conducted on one day. $7,278 gold stars that day. Who are these people? Who are these Gold Star people? They're all around you. did my Wednesday show, and we'll see if we can resume that at some point and get a little bit stronger. But when I did my Wednesday show, millions of people all around the world heard me say, there's gold stars in your neighborhood. If you're in the United States, they're in every neighborhood. They're in every neighborhood. There's gold stars. There's families that have been touched by the loss of someone killed in action in every single neighborhood. Now, I would start off saying names. I wanted to do that. I have on my Facebook, I think it's accessible. I think I made it accessible to anybody. I think I made it public accessible. But I have a kind of a rolling memorial. So I want you, if you've lost someone, if you're a gold star, to go there to my Facebook and just find that post and if you have a picture, put a picture and the name of your loved one that was lost. But these are regular people. I was going to list the names of my friends, that are gold stars. And doing what I do, oddly, I have a ton. Wouldn't you agree? And a ton of friends. And I guess now you too, having been involved. A ton of friends. So many friends who are gold stars. Parents, siblings, and children. It's an enormous number of people. I have so many friends that I was going to try to type them out, all the names, and I was going to try to figure, and I wanted to say their names and say their soldier's name. But I have so many friends who have lost and are now gold stars that I was afraid I'd forget one. It's stunning. Can you imagine? I have a good friend of mine I graduated from high school with, and also another friend who I was pleased to consult with. She and her son. He's about to leave. I think he's going into the Navy. And I'm a Navy guy. He's going into the Navy, and they're very excited. 13 days from boot camp, I was in the Navy. I was in boot camp, loving every minute of it. I'm just telling you right now, I loved it. I know it's crazy, but I loved it. Maybe I like pain, I guess. Good thing.
13 days from graduation.
13 days, what did I say?
You just left out graduation.
13 days from graduation, yeah. I was in boot camp. Thank you. And I loved every minute of it. There were some tough parts of it for sure, but I loved it. I loved it because so many people I was great friends with two guys who had almost the same name. One was DF, the other was DP. One was a gangbanger with I don't know how many bullet holes in him from being a gangbanger in Miami, and the other used to be a drum major at the University of Michigan. Came from a great family, well-to-do. Don't you know we made him our our marching leader was him. But they were from such different worlds. And yet we went into the military together, and here we are immersed in boot camp in this crazy environment, all this crazy stuff going on. And yet we melted together. One guy joined the Navy because if he stayed in Miami, he was going to be killed. And he didn't want to live that life anymore. And he joined the Navy. And he was one of my dearest friends. Another guy was from the West Indies. Joe Lee. Smiled all the time. All the time. He was the fastest runner I've ever seen in my whole life. I've never seen anybody run that fast. Grinning. He was a very dark-skinned black guy with very big, very white, perfect teeth. And you would just see this flash go by. And we used to joke about it with him. And oh man, you're not going to see me run, man. Especially at nighttime, I keep my mouth shut. I was like, oh, come on, brother. Come on now. And we laughed. This great guy. Great, great guy. Had another guy there who left seminary. He was about to graduate seminary. Eisenhower was his name. He was about to graduate seminary. Now, we knew something was up. This guy was huge. Huge guy. Really tall, really big. He had the biggest head I'd ever seen on it. He was like 6'6", just giant head. They couldn't find a Dixie cup, the Navy sailor hat. They couldn't find one. The day we went to get issued our hats, they couldn't find one big enough for his head. Maybe, I thinking of this story, I thought of my son. We have to buy special hats for this kid. Big old head. we knew something was up because the first full day of boot camp, we're all about dying. And the senior chief and the chief said, now you're going to have to find somebody. You're going to have to find somebody in here in this group know how to pray, because every night I want you all to be praying before you go hit your rack. Every night. Now, I don't know if they do that anymore. There's probably some atheist or ACLU group of cry foul over that. But every night, he said, I want you all to pray every night. Who in here wants to pray? I was going to raise my hand. My hand started part way up. I was about midway. And Eisenhower's hand went up. And he said, sir, I'll pray, sir. We knew something was up because when this dude prayed, it was the most beautiful prayer, make you cry. Every night it was the most beautiful thing. We had not a guy in our company, but another guy in another company, one floor away and up from us, that committed suicide. Just couldn't handle the stress. He just didn't realize that it's not about all that, you know. He had some other problems, I presume. Well, it devastated us. It rocked our world. And then we had another guy in another company die on the grinder, because I figured it'd be good to go to Orlando, Florida for boot camp in July. That's what I thought would be fun. Not all that smart. I'm just not all that smart. No, it was June, I think it was. So what I'm saying is when this happened, this rocked us, and he prayed. It was like he'd been working toward this his whole life, this guy. And he prayed the most beautiful, elegant prayer, but he's a real Christian. He was a real Christian. He was a real human being. And all these people, and Dot, you know, we called him Dot. He's the guy that gave the finger. He became a Navy SEAL and gave the finger to the CNN guy as he was coming ashore at the beginning of the war. You know, the beginning of the war, there was a feint where the war planners, you know, they pretended like they were going to attack from one area, and they sent guys ashore, and the cameramen, it leaked somehow, or cameramen went there, and they were filming them coming out of the water. And he gave the finger to the CNN guy and pushed him over into the sand. He got in a little trouble. Well, then he got in a little trouble again when he was filmed coming home, trying to hurry up and get home to see his baby born. And a reporter, you know, heard about the story. This guy's coming back from the war to, you know, see his baby. He's rushing. And the cameras are all in his face. When he gave the finger again, he got in a little trouble again. He was ranking a little bit higher, but, you know, it was a mess. It was a real mess. Come totally different families, totally different places. Mississippi, Louisiana, Philly, Miami, Maine. I was from Delaware. It was the worst thing being the only kid from Delaware. Nobody could remember anybody from Delaware. Turns out there was 3 other people in other companies that I went to high school with that were there at the same time. Only 2 stayed in the Navy, made it through boot camp. The point is this: is all these diverse people, you know, they belong to somebody. They're loved by somebody. Somebody's at home going, well, I hope they get through boot camp all right. And then when you get through boot camp all right, you're proud, you know. But that's not the real military yet, right? Anybody's been in the military knows that's not the real military yet. It's fixing to get real here in a little bit. And then the ones that have schools to go to, they're going to go to that school, and they're still going to have some discipline, but it's not going to be the same as boot camp. They're going to have some more freedoms that they may or may not take advantage of. And then they go to school, and the schooling is a lot harder than most people ever realize, you know. These service people are in charge of some serious stuff and protecting some serious stuff. So they're stretched, their capabilities are stretched, their character is tested and grown. But somebody at home is going, well, okay, well, at least this isn't the real Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine. This is we're close, but they're not out there. They're not there yet. They're not in trouble yet. Tell you what, I personally saw 2 people die during training. 2 people I was training with die. Don't think training is super safe and easy, because it's not. They just had a guy from Camp Lejeune, Marine from Camp Lejeune, get killed in training. They've had 2 pilots have to punch out in Columbus, Mississippi, at a pilot training center. I mean, don't think training is not dangerous. Any of the services, don't think the training part of it is not dangerous, because they get hurt and they get killed all the time. But the families are still at home, and they're not amped up yet. They're not that worry mode, that linear worry is not anchored yet. Hasn't set in yet. And then all of a sudden, they finish. The kids finish. Thank you all for joining us in chat. That's so awesome. Thank you. They finish their training. And they say, okay, where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I headed? And you get this little sheet. It tells you where you're going. Some are going to another school. Some are going to the fleet. Like I can speak for the Navy. Some are going to the fleet. Some are going to a squadron if they're airbound. Some are going any number of places, but they're going somewhere. And many of them are going to war zones. Many of them are going to war zones. Well, then it got real. Because mom and dad, brother, sister, maybe husband, wife. Now we have to say husband because there's lots of women that go into combat now. My dear friend Bob Huff, Sam, Sun and Moon. You have to look up his album. It's on my Facebook. It's on my website, drshawngreener.com, all that stuff. Name. What's that?
Kirkuk 2005.
I know it's 2005, but what month?
Kirkuk. She was in
Kirkuk. If you look up Kirkuk 2005, she was killed. She was barely there. 10 days, I think.
She was there right before Sean went there.
Yeah. And she got killed. 18-year-old girl. Beautiful 18-year-old girl. Super talented. I think of them. Well, they're just getting there. They're not going to put them into the danger just yet. They're going to work them into it. It's not how war works. Can you imagine sending your beautiful 18-year-old daughter and not 10 days pass? And someone drives up to your house. Now, he was a detective, and he served in all kinds of different roles in the Tucson Police Department. He was a retired police officer when I met him. But can you imagine that? Can you imagine them kind of hunting you down and finding out where you are, the notification officer, the casualty officer, to come and sit you down? He said, I asked him, I said, what did you think when they... He said, my mind went blank. I was blank. I didn't have anything. It was the most crushing blankness I ever felt in my life. Empty. The only emotion that was left was just utter disbelief and crushing grief. And he told me, he looked at me, he and his wife, his dear wife, told me sitting at Michael Quinn's at the table behind Michael Quinn's, just around the corner there outside. Michael and Bonnie's. And he told me, he said, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my life. And I'm still dealing with it. I'm still dealing with it. And I can't believe it. So many others. I could list them. I mean, so many others. Friends that, we became friends through the Michael Strange Foundation workshops. So many that just kind of sit there and say, I still sometimes will wake up and I want to go to my kid's room and say, hey, I'm going to so-and-so today. And then you get halfway down the hall and you stop and you say, whoa, they're gone. I had one tell me that story. He said 3 mornings in a row, he slept soundly. Finally, after all these years, slept soundly, and he gets up and he's going to go to this kid's room because he was a kid when he went. He was only 19 when he was killed. And he's walking down the hall. He's all excited. He's going to tell him where he's going. And he stops right at the portrait of his son that somebody painted in memoriam. So many stories, so many. We have so many that we've heard. You've heard so many of people at the utter just despair, the utter depths of grief. I say all that to say this, that Memorial Day is one day for us, or maybe a weekend, right? One day. This one day. Barbecues, parades, beach maybe, if the weather's nice and you live near a beach. Sometimes there's if you need a mattress, it's a good time, right? Memorial Day sale, we get a mattress, we get a car. I don't know what, you get you some flowers cheap. I mean, they Memorial Day sale anything nowadays. One day comes and it's gone. Maybe the most of it, it's a weekend. But these Gold Star families, it's all day, every day. Their kid, their husband, their wife, their son, their daughter, their father, their mother. We're going to have an opportunity to minister to some of the kids, Gold Star kids. I'm excited to hear about that and hoping that works out where we can help them. Can you imagine? How many of you like to see, if you're on social media or on the internet at all, you like to see those stories of the video of the parent coming home early from Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever they are around the world and surprising their kid or their wife or whatever, and they turn around and they're like, or they take off the school mascot suit, or they pop out of the box. It's me. We love those stories, don't we? You don't have any heart if you don't tear up when you see those. But I want you to think this weekend, I want you to think about the families who the greeting they get is a dark-colored car and officers, military officers of their branch, in their dress uniform, pulling up out front. I've told you this story countless times of the lady who she wouldn't come to the door. She saw them, she collapsed, she left the door locked, she ran, and she locked herself in a closet. Because she felt like, if I don't answer the door, I don't ever have, this can't be real if I don't answer the door. What happens when your whole world falls apart? What happens when your whole world falls apart? And I'm telling you, in the Living Through Grief on Purpose, I'd encourage you to get that. I don't make anything off of it. It's free. You're not going to get hit up for money or anything like that. So please don't hesitate to get it. But in that, I talk about when your whole world falls apart, all of a sudden, 1 minute you're a family intact, the next minute your life is over. I still remember the story of the man that got the notification that his wife, they got married right before, they were both in the Navy, and she deployed. She was a doctor, Navy doctor, she was a Navy nurse, and she deployed, and he didn't deploy. They were just married, and she deployed, and it was only 3 months, like 92 days, I think they said. 92 days she was there, and she got killed. And the vehicle drove up to his house, and they lived in a condo, and he said, I was sitting out on the little place where you're not supposed to grill, but I was getting ready to grill, a little patio. He said I was a couple floors up, and I'm getting ready to fire up the grill that I wasn't supposed to have, and then I see this military vehicle drive up, and he said, honestly, I wanted to jump off. I knew immediately they were there for me, even though he said I knew they were there for me. There were other military families in the condo where he was staying because it was a military area. But he said, I knew in my heart they were there for me. And he said, I stood at the railing and I looked into the parking lot and I watched them as they got out of the vehicle. And as they got themselves situated, they made sure their gig line was straight, their shoes were perfect, the crease wasn't folded under. Their cover was perfectly done and situated. And they started walking toward the building. And he said, I just wanted to jump off. He said, it never occurred to me that my wife would be killed in battle. Ever. He said, she's a nurse. She's working on, and they worked on the enemy as well as, they worked on innocents. They worked on the enemy. They worked on them. They operated on anybody. They tried to help anybody. He said, but, she was a helper. She helped people. She helped heal people. She helped save people's lives. How would this happen that she's on a base, they're operating, they're doing a surgery, and a rocket? The enemy fires a rocket into the base and hits where they're operating. Killed her and 3 others. He said, I just couldn't grasp it. I couldn't. We were just married. We just got this condo. You know, she was making combat pay, which was exciting because they had figured in her tour, her deployment, the extra money from her deployment, they were going to save that extra money to put toward, they were going to move up a little bit and have a little nicer place. And that's what they were going to do. They were really excited. They used to joke about it, and they would Skype back and forth, yeah, put that money away. Don't drink my combat pay away. Don't drink my hazardous duty pay away. Don't drink my this pay away. Put that away. He's like, no worries, honey. I got you. He said one time he even went out and bought these chips. He said, I don't even gamble, but I got these chips. And on Skype, I was flipping them up. And he goes, this one's 100. This one's a 50. I'm turning your money into earnings. We're going to get it. We'll buy a house with what I'm making off of it. And it was a big joke. It's just funny because she said he was so tight with money that he would never be able to gamble a dime. But he said, this is my new reality. And you know what he told me that stood out to me? He told me, he said, people said a lot of things to me afterward. Well, you're military. I'm sure you understand. I'm sure you're prepared for this. But prepared to lose my wife? No, I wasn't prepared. Yeah, I kind of, it was an outside chance, but he said they'd say the stupidest things to me. He said, but the thing that got me the worst was the fellow military folks. Some who live in the complex. He sees every day. Hey, how's it going? Come here, have a beer, whatever. We got an extra piece of chicken on the barbecue. Come on, come down and eat it. Now all of a sudden everybody's avoiding him. Like it's going to rub off on you, That terrible thing, that terrible, terrible luck's going to rub off on you. And he asked me this question. He said, Sean, I don't know what to do. Doc, I don't know what to do. My whole world has fallen apart. What do you do when your whole world falls apart? The only answer I had for him was obviously give him the eBook, which it is very helpful, people are telling me, but was to tell him, listen, I don't know if you have a faith in God or you don't. And you probably, with this having happened in your life, you might be mad at God. I don't know. I can't assume, but I can just tell you this. I don't know how I get through my life without God. And I know lots of other people that have been in your shoes that's one of the things they said was friends, family, and God. I've mentioned several times about, and I'll be finished with this, I've mentioned several times about notification, the death notification. And I don't know if you've ever considered what that must be like. I've had to do it. I've had to be that person. And as a police officer, I had to do it on a few occasions. I'm going to be very honest with you. I've done a lot of hard stuff. That's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. I would rather have to do a very dangerous mission than to have to pull up to somebody's house and tell them the news nobody wants to hear. And instigate a pain that will never go away. And start a Memorial Day every day in their life. There's a lot of protocol that goes with it. You want to be very clear. You want to be very direct. You want to look them right in the eye. You don't want to say anything that they passed away or they're gone. They were killed or they died. You say either one of those two words. They were either killed or they died in action. The directness, the finality of it. When we're trained to do it, you are trained from the beginning to be emotionless, to be deadpan. Not to be careless, but emotionless. And you get through the whole thing, and you have to watch for all the different emotions that happen, the reactions that happen, and you have to let them have what they're going to have. I read a story about a guy who became a notification officer. He went into the military to become a notifications officer because when he was 7 years old, that same vehicle and those same two officers pulled up to his house and got the mother to sit down in the kitchen. And he said, I'd never heard my mother wail like that. She told us to go sit in the front room, the parlor, and I'd never heard my mother wail like that, ever. And I went running into her. And I was 7, but I understood. They wear the same uniform as my daddy does. He must have died. He must have been killed. He said, I remember going to his funeral, which was, he died with honors. He was buried with honors. It was a real big deal. There was a couple thousand people there. And he's like, wow, my dad was really something. And he would say to people would come up to him and say, you doing all right, buddy? You doing all right? And he'd say, yes, sir. My dad was really something, wasn't he? And they all said the same thing. No, your dad was a hero. Your dad was a hero. He said, I don't know. Looking back, a grown man now, been in the Navy a long time. He said, looking back now, I don't know that I could say that it was at that moment that I wanted to be the person who gave that notification, the hardest job in the military, really and truly. He said, but you know what? I went to school to get some training, and then I went into the military, and then I said, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And the military trained him further, and he became a liaison officer and casualty officer and worked his way up to, he's an E9, Master Chief Petty Officer. And he said, I did that because I realized that people all around the country are going to get that notification. And that had better come from somebody who knows what it feels like. I wonder if this weekend, the weekends, I guess they say it's getting started really. It's going to start and then it's going to end pretty quickly. But I wonder if you would consider this. I wonder if you would consider how it might be for people in your neighborhood. I remember one of the Michael Strange Foundation workshops we did. I can't remember if it was Ocean City or I don't think it was Tucson. I think it was Ocean City, where the lady, her husband was killed. Was it her husband or her son was killed in World War II or Korea? Remember that elderly lady?
That was Ocean City. Yeah.
That was Ocean City. Okay. And she still. It still was hard. It still was powerful for her. I just want to encourage you to think about this Memorial Day. If you're not familiar with your town where you live, and they have a memorial, but you've just never been to it, go to the memorial. Go to the Soldiers Memorial. Spend some time. If you live near a cemetery where they have military buried there, go to that. If they have a veteran cemetery in your state or your town, go to that. Walk among the headstones. If you live anywhere near Arlington, go to Arlington. Plan on spending the day. Take you some water. Take you some tissues. A lot of people I was good friends with in Arlington. I have a pretty serious brain injury, but I can go right to their gravestone. It's a giant place. I can drive right to their gravestone. Some stuff you don't forget. Even today, someone in this country is receiving a notification that is the worst possible news I think could ever get. I want you to think about taking a day, part of a day, and reminding yourself what this is about. There's some verses in Living Through Grief on Purpose that I highlight in there. And I also, I've talked to a lot of Gold Stars. My dear friend and sister, Debbie Lee, of course we know well. Her son, Mark Allen Lee, was the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq. She is America's Mighty Warriors and just serving the family so beautifully. Such dignity. And there's some stories in there about which people have said to her and how she dealt with it, and verses that she prays on. And then Karen Vaughn, her son Aaron Carson Vaughn, killed in extortion 17. There's some verses in there also from her and some stories in there. I think you'll like them. I think it'll help you. I believe it'll help you. Listen, I'm thinking of Jason Workman right now. Jason, he was a Navy SEAL, DevGru guy, killed also in extortion 17, not long after he died, not that many years after he died. Our friend Betty Lou, her husband, Rodney, was killed returning from a memorial ride. A lot of folks around you. Nancy and Mark and Shauna and Collie and the list is long. Zell and so many others. Just so I could spend an hour saying the names of the parents. They're all around you. Don't think for a moment they're not. Take some time to pray for those people. And then when you bump into those people, just simply say, thank you for your unrepayable sacrifice for my freedom. Learn who they are. Do something good for them. It's about time we did that as a country.